I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting. It is 7 o'clock and we have a full board present, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Denise as our newest member.
Welcome, Denise.
Welcome, Denise.
Thank you.
With that, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Moved it. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're gonna move things around a bit. I apologize on the agenda because of a time constraint. So we are gonna go starting old business real quick. And we're gonna talk about the solar retail community host agreement. And as part of that discussion, we're also gonna have town councils on now that we're gonna also have a discussion about the representative going forward. So we'll get it all done in one swoop. So Renee, would you like to come up?
Okay, I don't need anything, right? I'm gonna face bombs.
Remember,
Hi,
Denise
Amy.
was not here for the last.
So do you want me to go through the whole?
I watched it, okay.
You watched it, yeah.
All right.
I just do a shorter.
A short snippet?
version. Yeah.
So the, what's in front of you is a First Amendment for the host community agreement for Solar Retail Norton, doing business as Canna, and also the memo of agreement. So the changes to the host community agreement, the big changes include a community impact fee fund cap. And that cap is at $35,000. The way that the language is that once money is drawn from that fund, then the business would continue to pay into it.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Renee's always telling me to unmute.
I am, you're
Is
right.
Amy back on?
It happened the last meeting we were on.
Wait, we lost Amy.
I think it just showed Mike because he was the last person that makes noise. So it includes the community impact fund. It has changes to that regard that align to the changes from the Cannabis Control Commission in respect to any of the other payments that were outlined before. It said that the organization would the company would reimburse the town. That's all been changed to show that we would the town would use the community impact fees to cover those expenses, such as the police officer training, any sort of facility consultant fees and costs, etc. And then additionally, it has as part of this change, it has the annual charitable nonprofit contribution and the annual community benefit payments moved to a memo of agreement. The annual community benefit payment has changed slightly in that it now is worded as an annual gift to the town, and those funds would be allocated to the Town Hall Community Center and Athletic Field project based upon the, for whatever the specifics are, the board oversees that based on the authority of the board. And then that also includes a public recognition of the company as well. And that's to be decided, I believe, by the Permanent Building Committee and the Select Board jointly. The other thing, so the charitable contribution moved there too. There was a slight, not a change in the annual funds for that. It was, before it was $25,000 for the charitable contribution, $25,000 for the community benefit. It switched slightly from a tax perspective to $30,000 for the charitable contribution. And that does only count for the state because federally this is not a recognized business, even though they accept taxes from them. And then the other was reduced to $20,000. So total, it's still $50,000 annually. The other thing I believe that we moved was, actually it is not in this particular one, everything else holds true. So I think that's a very brief and fast summary of it. Oh, the other change as well, and that would be more advantageous for the company, is the language before for the annual charitable contributions noted that it would be due 1 month after a year in operation. That was changed slightly so that they could make any sort of charitable contributions throughout the year, and it still has the process where they would come to the select board for approval. So again, that was put in place because during COVID, when we were doing the RFI process and the initial host community agreements, everybody had listed the same charitable organization, So, we figured that the needs of the town are going to change slightly, so this allows for some discussion with the company and the board on where the need might be, so that, there's a disbursement of funds across many different nonprofits versus just one.
Great, thank you.
I think, Mike, is there anything that I may have missed?
Okay.
And I know Amy's on.
Amy? Amy? Where are you, Amy?
I think I lost it.
Hello, Amy?
Is that camera on?
Well, Amy, Mike's over here, so maybe she can't hear.
We're out of microphones.
It should be. Audio settings are good. I tested the mic.
Test.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we got you, Peter. We got you.
Yes.
We got your meter.
So, Renee, is there, just remind me, is there wording in there, I like that they're gonna come back to the board if there's, different needs for the town for the charitable contribution. Is there wording in there to that effect?
Yes, yep.
I didn't think there was before, but I think.
No,
there
there has always been that they had to come for the board review. Let me jump to it real quick and I'll tell you what it is.
So did Amy not hear that whole?
It says, said charities, nonprofit organizations to be determined by the company and approved by the town.
The camera can't be on because.
Yeah, the one question I had on that was, is it's gonna be to the same charity every year,
Right.
What is it?
Yeah.
rather than just.
Yeah, it's showing.
So that was my big.
Yeah, and I
It's
think I
shown, the
mentioned at the
camera's
last
shown.
meeting too,
Yeah,
like,
but
one
they
of the
say
things
that would be
that
not
we
shown.
talked about with the companies, like
is
for
there a
example,
certain thing on the
community,
webinar
right,
that
they
I'm
weren't
not-
able to have a big fundraiser for the year. So that's an organization that this year will probably be lower in funds than maybe some of the others, so the money could be directed to them. My hope is that we continue to stay in touch and communicate, with the owners so that they understand what the needs of the town are. And I think that they've been really good about having those discussions too. So, you'll see, it'll ebb and flow. I mean, sometimes it might be the food pantry. Initially, everybody said the food pantry. So that's why we wanted to change that a little bit. And I think that everybody was actually happy about that to have a selection.
Where are you?
So Renee, as far as the.
I signed in with the code that was on the link, meeting link. Shane told me to use that one because if I didn't, it wouldn't work.
Okay.
Should I just sign out and sign back into the code that you're speaking of?
Material change that.
There's no-
How come I can't see where it says on
Some of the
you?
verbiage, if you can explain to everybody, I know
Sure,
some of the
sure.
verbiage kind
So
of.
the
I'm the only one
biggest change
showing
was
that.
where we
So
could
Zoom
actually
webinar,
allocate
though, I'm in the Zoom
funding
app. Should I go on the
impact in
website instead?
Yeah.
The community benefit payments. So that was a change where before we thought that we would have more flexibility with them, say for example, to fund things like Narcan with the fire department. That's not something that we can do. So it's very specific to the impact that the organization has on the community, marijuana related. The only thing that has not changed, and this is where Mike and I had some discussion when we were talking about where is that cap limit, right? Because what potential costs could we have, and to make sure that we had the funds if we needed them. So one of the things that they kept in here was the substance abuse prevention programming. We've historically focused on it, well, I shouldn't say historically, but we focused on it from both an adult and a teen use. And, we'll continue doing that because they haven't really defined what that means. It's just substance abuse. So we certainly have expenses within the school, and I know that they're looking to actually do a marijuana prevention program. And I think it's attached to the vaping and some of the issues that we've experienced there with that. So, those are potential things that because,
Just going to my personal.
it's reasonable to think because we have this business in town and we have access, people have more access to marijuana, that potentially the substance abuse programming would be helpful. So
Do you want
those are
to just
things,
put my laptop there?
again,
Would
like
that tie
initially, we
in?
just thought that we
It
had
might.
a much
I'm just gonna try
wider
one more thing.
array or broader, ability to use the funds for different programs that we have, but it's really been focused on teen use mitigation, prevention, and then the items that they listed here, like I'll just read municipal inspection costs, the traffic intersection design studies, public safety personnel overtime costs, and then environmental impact studies. So I think the one expense that we have had, and I mentioned the last meeting, let me just grab one thing on what it was. It's for the police officer training, so we have incurred expenses, almost $2,500 to have, I believe, 4 or 5 of our police officers go through training so that they're better able to identify if somebody's under use of marijuana when they're driving. So that one will still, that's still a covered expense.
Madam Chair. So the community impact fee cap, we feel like is substantial enough that we don't have to worry about.
Well, not only substantial, but it has a language around it that once the fund is, once we use expenses from it, we have expenses that we draw from, then the company would pay to replenish back to $35,000.
Okay. Great.
But it's back to I think we talked about, like, we don't want to take in all this money because the way that this was done initially, there's no account specifically when we put the money, so it goes in general fund. So James has to be very careful about making sure that money's there. And in order for us to return it, unless something changes with the state, we have to go to town meeting to actually return that money to the companies. So it just puts more process behind it.
That makes sense. Right, and the CCC's been tightening up on what they'll consider marijuana related.
Yeah,
And they've been changing it
like
weekly.
reasonable,
right?
yeah.
Because I know during the SRO discussion that came up, could we use some of that community impact fee for an SRO with the elementary schools, and it's not really related
No.
to, so that was kind of.
Now, if they're doing
Yeah, track it
training
down.
programs that are marijuana related,
Yeah.
that might be a portion where it can be funded, so that's something that Chief Clark can talk to
Yeah.
Mike about. Oh, there's Amy, and there's me.
Hi, Amy, sorry. Oh, we can't hear her.
Amy, you're muted.
No, she's not. Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Up.
Now we can hear you.
Can you hear me, Amy?
Wait, can we turn it up a little?
So she can see my little photobomb earlier.
Go ahead,
Good
Amy.
job.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Amy, I can hear it loud and clear.
You just have to shut yours off and the echo will be gone.
Was there a specific question for me or just should
That's what I was
I go over?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna Is it yours off? Sorry.
I think it's this one, but it can't be shut off.
Alright, just wanna go back to yours, Mike, then, if there's an echo.
Your text always hard at work.
While you're talking.
Alright,
All right, good.
we're
Are
good?
we good?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Amy, for joining us. So first I'll ask if the board has, we've been going back and forth with Renee and just getting, again, updated. Does the board have any questions specifically for Amy?
So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be hearing something, but Michael, you're muted and I think I was hearing them through you.
Those mics.
No, we're working.
I think it's just she can't, do you have a way to extend the mic over to the board?
Okay.
Vice Secretary, so I didn't want you to think you're alone.
Okay.
So it's gonna be this one, actually.
Sounds good.
I can just move the table.
Here.
Can you hear us now? Yes and no.
This concludes our lesson on how to make a long meeting longer.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
That happens.
We'll have to go back to you, Mike. That's in that regard.
Do you want to try and move this one over to them, like put it in front of Steve?
It's like 13 mics in one, so it should pick it up, it always does.
Amy, can you hear us?
No,
Can you mute yourself?
no. Because it's in the webinar form, not a typical Zoom. And the audio settings work for the mic that's put.
Hi.
Alright, so I'll shut mine off. I'll sign out.
Okay,
Alright.
we got you.
We don't see her.
Gotcha. On the small
No,
screen.
we can't hear her.
All right, gotcha.
Right on the live.
Oh,
Then do you
Do you want to take the HDMI to Mike's,
Yeah.
from the
Do
TV
that.
to Mike's?
Amy, can you hear us?
I can.
Wonderful. Okay,
And I can see you. I can hear you and see you.
that's amazing. All right, we'll jump back in here. So Renee has given us, again, another update and just sort of explain things, and I was just asking the board if they have specific questions. Why did that go away? Does anyone have questions for Amy while we have Amy?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Amy. One quick question. I want to make sure with the recent laws that have changed regarding these HCA agreements, I just want to make sure that from a liability standpoint that the town is covered anything future down the road. I mean, I know we can modify and adjust if need be. Just want to make sure that's covered
Correct.
from a liability standpoint.
So right now, we are in accordance with the legislation that was enacted to change the statute. What we don't have is the Cannabis Control Commission, the CCC. They are supposed to issue regulations with regard to HCA's, but those are not coming out until November at the earliest. And so it really wouldn't have been fair to ignore the requests of the facilities to amend their HCA in accordance with the new legislation, and then and have them have to wait until these new regulations come out. So what we've done is we have amended these we've amended the HCA's based on the statute, the new statute, and this.
No.
She's talking over there, but she's not talking here.
And after November, when the actual rules and regulations come out. But I think this was done on an equity basis for the facilities, so they could be in line with the new legislation. It's just unfortunate that the CCC is taking as long as they are for their new regulations with regard to HCA's. And quite honestly, we're not sure what those regulations are going to say. We have attended numerous meetings with the CCC and webinars on this, and it's just hard to tell where they're going to come down on these at this point. We're hoping that by the end of summer, we have a better idea of what the regulations will look like.
Okay, thank you. So when they do come out, Renee can adjust if need be, and we can...
If we have to, you know, maybe we anticipated everything 100% of the point. I don't know. I doubt it. But yes, we would just simply come back with an amendment. Yep.
Okay, so these are 100% compliant now?
Right now, they're in compliance with the current legislation.
Okay.
And they are, you know, while an HCA is required under the statute, an HCA is still a contract between two parties. And so if both parties sign on to the contract, you know, it is a contract. So if you'll notice, there's breach provisions, there's notice provisions. It's essentially, it is a contract. So we did work it out with, you know, Solar Retail, and, you know, came to these changes to make them more in line with the current statute.
May I ask if the board is also comfortable with, we're going to also discuss the question at hand, which is the designee that Renee has been negotiating, and if we're okay, I'd like to make a motion to vote on this, and then we can also have a discussion, so unless someone wants to do it reverse, if they think there's anything.
No, I think we're at the point that the agreements have already been
Right.
negotiated, so I mean,
Right, so
yeah,
we're
but
fine
we
with
can,
that.
I mean, we can discuss that at a
Yep.
date, that's fine.
So should we make a motion then?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
I'll make a motion to approve the Solar Retail Norton Host Community Agreement, First Amendment.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I'll make a motion to approve the Solar Retail Norton Memorandum of Agreement.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
was it Denise, did you vote?
Aye, sorry.
Sorry, I just want to make sure, so Jen, it was
I don't think I
unanimous for
actually
both.
did, so yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure, all right, so we have unanimous. While we have Amy, I'd like to bring up, sorry.
No, I think we have, is Alyssa in the audience here?
Yeah, she's there.
This is in the
Yeah,
audience.
did Alyssa want to say something to any of this, or?
No,
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I apologize.
no, I'm just here listening.
Okay, my apologies, I didn't mean to call you out there.
So I'd like to extend, Amy, while we have you, I know you have a hard stop, so I'd like to just have an open discussion about, as you know, we appointed Renee as the designate to talk to negotiate the HCA's. There was question about whether when she left the board, if the charter allows for that to have us appoint someone. So we just want to get 100% clarity from you that, and then we can decide as a new board if we want to continue using, if it's legal, which we were told it was, then we would continue.
So sure. So in my opinion, it's completely appropriate. And the reason being is that Renee is not she is not binding the board at all. She doesn't have that authority. So for example, while she worked on this amendment with the facility, Michael was involved. I was also involved very closely, but she came up with a product, which is the First Amendment to the HCA, and she's putting it before you. Now, you are the authority. You are the signatory. So you don't have to sign it if you don't like a term, if you don't like the agreement at all. So you are not really delegating anything, in my opinion, because in my opinion, to delegate means that you are delegating some kind of authority, whereas
We're delegating
Renee
the work.
is not signing. What you're doing is
Giving her all the work.
She really did do, above and beyond with regard to the time she spent on this, and all of these. But yes, so there's no delegation of authority. The companies knew from the very beginning that the select board has to sign the document. And so, there was no misunderstanding. So again, in my opinion, to delegate really means to delegate authority, and that did not happen and cannot happen because only the select board can bind the town with regard to contracts.
Great. Does anyone have other questions regarding this?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it wasn't my question initially, but I believe there was a question from a prior member about, if a select board member was willing to negotiate to be that point person, would that supersede? Again, it wasn't my question. I'm probably butchering it.
And I want to add, and correct me, Amy, if I'm wrong, but there's nothing saying that any one of us, or all of us, frankly, if we wanted to, could, right, join Renee in
Correct. So
discussions.
So when you appointed one member of the select board, that member cannot bind the select board. There has to be a vote. There has to be a vote, a motion, a second, and there has to be a majority vote to actually enter into this contract.
I think the question was more for I'm sorry, Amy, the question was more for the designated negotiator, not for binding anything. And again, if I'm right, that was the question, yeah.
So normally, normally in practice, there is one member of the select board that works with the town manager to negotiate these host community agreements. However, Norton and a few other towns, in my opinion, had a great idea, which was to set up a process for having these facilities come into town, getting these host community agreements signed, and for Norton that was through the Economic Development Board, whereas others they've set up actual subsets of a planning board member and or a select board member, something like that. So the way that Norton has set it up, I think it's completely appropriate, because those facilities were originally recommended to the select board from the Economic Development Board. So to me, it makes sense. But again, that is up to this board. That's up to the select board. So if you had, 2 candidates that you were going to have be the point person on this, again, you would have to vote and decide, what's better. Is it better to have a select board member, or is it better to have, an economic development board member? It's really up to you guys. There's no real, hard and fast rule that it has to be a select board
And
member.
Amy, there doesn't have to be a vote if a select board member wants to be, just to partake in the conversations with Renee, correct?
No, and I actually, no, and I wouldn't really, I don't think I would have a vote, because you really don't want to start appointing subcommittees, because once you start appointing a subcommittee, they're subject, to the open meeting law, and, your negotiations are hindered. So usually, yes, it's just, one member, and if that member wants to reach out to whoever is doing it, whether it be Michael or Renee, and, find out what's going on and give them ideas, that's perfectly fine, like with anybody.
Great.
I think, Madam Chair, through you, I think that answered the question that was outstanding of who the select board can appoint to do these negotiations.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And thank you, Renee.
All right, everyone, have a
Thank you,
good,
Renee.
I wasn't sitting down.
nothing else?
No, I think we're good.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you for making me first. I appreciate it.
Yes, no worries.
Okay.
Mike, what order do you want? We have the hearing. That should be quick. All right, again, I apologize, we're just trying to jockey all the different things around.
All our guests.
All our
We have
guests.
A lot of guests.
I know, we don't usually have guests, so we appreciate having guests. We're gonna open the public hearing. Where's the language on that language? Do you know the language on
I think it's right on the agenda.
Yeah, you can just, I think you can just use
Oh.
it.
it? Do we have to close the? No, we don't have to close the.
You just need a motion to open the public hearing. All right. So I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the application of Shri Jalaram LLC, DBA Old Colony Wine and Spirits, manager Parth Patel, for a new Section 15 off-premises alcohol beverages license available pursuant to special legislation, Chapter 364, Acts of 2022 at 376 Old Colony Road, Norton, Massachusetts.
I will second all of that.
All right, hello. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Attorney John Meridian, the Marcus Law Offices. With me is Parth Patel and Purvi Patel. And we're here before you to request approval of the issuance of a new all alcohol package store license, which is available, as you just mentioned, under special legislation. Legislation kind of tailors this license over to Old Colony Road on the North Attleboro line. So we've located the premises at 376 Old Colony Road and have entered into a letter of intent to lease the premises for 10 years. So they'll be there for a good period of time and requesting issuance of the license. And Parth Patel here as manager of record. Parth is TIP certified. They anticipate having 3 to 4 employees, and they will use an ID scanner to help combat underage alcohol sales. So with that, I'll welcome any questions, and I'm requesting approval tonight on condition that other town departments such as building, health, and whatnot sign off before the actual issuance of the license. I spoke to the building commissioner, and he wants to speak with the tenants, provided the license will be issued to go to the plans of the building. But that's the request tonight.
Yes, Denise.
So
So, through the chair, I have a question actually for Mike Unix. Were there any other applicants for liquor licenses, and did we publicize and try to get other applicants?
There were
Competitive bids?
Yeah, there were no other applicants, and I don't know how the word gets out there. It wasn't publicized, but we had one for the other side of town and one for this side of town.
That's been out since January, right?
Yeah.
January?
Yeah, I'd love to see competitive bids, right, so we can pick the best versus the first all the time.
Madam Chair, so this is one of the new, this is the second of the new licenses, the first one being Quick Stop, which we approved
Yeah.
a couple meetings ago. All right.
And that side of town is very sparse for places to actually put something like this.
Madam Chair? Yeah, Mike, can you speak a little bit about the building? We got some information about the building issues over there, I think, from Nick.
Yeah, do you have the email from Nick?
Yeah, yeah. So the building needs work, if we're gonna summarize it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so that's part of my request. The building does need work, they will build it up, they're putting, 100 grand into repairs here, but they don't want to expend time, effort, and finances now if licenses were denied to improve the building, so that's the request. So hopefully, all's done by mid to late August, if everything goes smoothly. That's the plan.
And what happens, I should ask Mike, if, say you're approved and then construction's not going the way it should and there's some issues, and say, I'm just throwing it out there, and you don't want at that point, you wouldn't want the liquor license, what happens at that juncture?
Well, there's two things. Non-use of license allows the board to pull it back. If they're making good faith efforts to improve the building, I think the board would be okay with that. But there's no work being done, there's non-use in the license, and the board has.
So is there a time frame, or I just don't know?
Unofficially, the ABCC says 6 months after notice. There's no golden rule to that.
Right.
That's true. It's usually, you never know with the ABCC. It's seems whatever they want to go with at that time, but it's usually you give someone a 6-month notice if they're not utilizing the license, they have the right to pull it back and issue it to somebody else.
Question. So I do have some concerns without not being able to see what the building's going to look like, because there are a lot of structural issues there. It's a very small building, so without being able to see like what the future state would look like, I'm having a hard time wanting to vote on this evening. But also, if we issue the license today and they decide not to move forward, isn't it quite often that these license holders will try to sell the licenses to an interested party that might want to open up a business?
They can't, right?
No.
These new licenses can't be sold.
Okay.
They come back
They
to
come
the
back to
town.
us.
Okay.
Yeah, even if they transfer to a new manager, they have to come back in front of us.
Right. I want to make sure that it's not like a quick profit.
Yeah.
No, there's no, these are restricted to this area of town, non-transferable to new owners.
And Madam Chair, through you, if we did vote on it and we approved it, it would be subject to, obviously, to getting the building in order and complying with the building inspector's requests.
Correct.
Sure.
Yeah.
So just to go back to what Denise was saying earlier about the competitive process, we talked about this, not to reopen old wounds, but we talked about this at the last one. At the last meeting, about having a competitive bid process. So should we consider advertising or publicizing the fact that we have this license so that we can possibly get other applicants? And this is nothing against these applicants, but town meeting did vote to have a process for these licenses, and now this will be the second of 2 licenses where we really haven't entertained that process. So Mike, you want to address that?
And I'll let the attorney talk on it, but under ABCC guidelines, you only have 30 days to act once you receive an application. So that's the problem with the competitive process.
I would,
Yes. Just question, I mean, we could request, right, an extension of that 30 days, particularly in this situation where we don't even know what the building situation is gonna look like and what the layout's gonna be, how the building's gonna be refurbished.
Well, that's all in the packet. That's, yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, how they're gonna lay it out, it's in here.
it'll be a 2,400 square foot package store with the floor plan provided. We are asking contingent upon building department approval, the plans are submitted once they meet with the architect. To go to the question about the 30-day rule, I would also note that these licenses were a home rule petition. So I do think the town residents did have some notice as to these being available for application. They were signed off by the governor in, I think, January. There's a time frame. I understand that's hard to keep track of, but there was some notice there to interested applicants.
Thank you. Madam Chair, so just a quick question. So we could, theoretically, I'm not suggesting this, but we could deny this application and they could reapply. Is that something that could be done?
You could deny the application and they could appeal to the ABCC your denial.
Yeah.
And then
Good. Go, sorry, go ahead.
there is a 1-year time bar if we are denied from reapplying.
From reapplying, okay.
You can't apply within that year.
At the same location.
And wouldn't we have to have a valid reason to deny this? Essentially, you don't need a valid reason, but you really should have a valid reason to deny.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say the valid reason is that, we have a process to try to follow, so.
Yep.
Okay, actually,
Denial.
yeah, can I have Renee from the EDC?
Yeah.
If I may, just to provide clarity, so the, back to the town meeting warrant, right, it was about the liquor license review process, so the review process was in place. All that is needed is for the final sign off from KP Law on, there's like one sentence that was inadvertently omitted that I put back in. So as part of that, the specific process outlines the timeline based on, it allows the town, so while the application may come in, the application isn't deemed complete until there's a recommendation from the EDC to the select board. So that's how the timeline is addressed in that. And I think that when Mr. Corbo was here last time, he provided guidance on what do you do if somebody has applied for the license, but you still want to enact that liquor license review process to have a competitive, but more just to see is there other interest. And I can tell you, I was contacted by somebody separately on this, so there definitely is interest. I don't know if the interest is still there, but the individual stated and was waiting for that liquor license review process to be enacted and have the date set for when the town's going to accept applications. Just as, like Amy had mentioned, we did this for the marijuana establishments as well, for other retail establishments, and the process is built on that same foundation, so that there's the liquor license review committee is the EDC, the town manager, and the planning director, or a designate of those two positions, and then has the same, qualifications and criteria for each of them so that you can evaluate each of the applications.
So, Madam Chair, so if I could ask Renee just real quick. So what I'm hearing in there is that the application is not complete until our process, until the EDC has accepted the application.
Right, but the board has to approve that process, right?
Or
And then we go out with
not the
the
EDC,
RFI.
not the EDC,
Not-
sorry,
not
the board.
EDC, yeah. The board approves the process, the
Yeah.
EDC will execute it, and then we have, I think we put in there like 3 weeks after the last applicant was reviewed, then we have to vote and provide recommendations back to the select board. And it could be that we don't recommend anyone, but we still have to provide you with a report of what was done. And the select board can follow the recommendations or they cannot follow, right? It's up to you. It allows a independent group to do a fair and consistent evaluation and then provide that data back to the board.
Okay.
Are there other questions, concerns?
Go ahead, Steve. No, to add on to what Renee said, I did hear from another applicant, or not applicant, potential applicant. But from my understanding, it wasn't about waiting for the timeline, it was finding a location. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, there's really nothing over there.
So, how I see it is we have willing party that's here. That people have known since January, right? You know, just because someone might have shown interest doesn't mean they have the horsepower, so to speak, to do it. These people are here. The building's being renovated in much better state now than what it was a month ago. They're clearly making betterments, and we do a conditional license with a specific time frame. I don't have any problem with that. These people are, you know, business people. You have other establishments. They know what they're doing, and the person that owns the property is making substantial improvements and showing the willingness to keep moving forward doing that. To a building that's been dilapidated for years. So, in my opinion, there's no one else at the table here. No one else put an application. So, that's my opinion on it.
Madam Chair. Yes. Yeah, I think we're kind of like, it's like deja vu. I feel like we're back to where we were a while back, which is, you know, we do have a willing party, you know, someone who's willing to you know, to invest in the town. And so, you know, I think we're also kind of in this limbo period of, you know, we're still waiting for KP to get back to us on this, on the town meeting article, or on the, you know, the language for the commission that's going to approve. So, you know, where does that leave us right now? It leaves us with an applicant, you know, potentially a good applicant that we have to make a decision on. So I just want, just reiterating, Alec, what you said, like, we're kind of in this limbo period here where there's, you know, we want to do what's best for the town, we want to do what's best for potential business in town, you know, and so, you know, it's not an enviable position we're in here to try to do, to kind of make this decision, but I agree with what you're saying.
I don't, I mean, it's black and white to me. You know, why hold it up, in my opinion, why hold it up any longer? And, you know, it's clearly an improvement over there, and they're going to make further improvements. You know, it's going to increase the tax base with the permitting that they do to do this work.
Yep.
So I was just going to say, I think the intent of the article that passed at town meeting was pretty clear. So much so that the attempt to move the committee was shot down at town meeting. So I think that we, in the spirit of trying to uphold that, a possible path forward I would suggest would be perhaps a delay on the application, 30-day time limit, rather than denial, so they can't apply within a year. Have them considered as part of the application process. If they end up at the end of the day being the only ones, then so be it. But if we know we have some potential other applicants that are considering applying for the license, I'd love to see a competitive process here and get the best versus the first.
I don't know if it's, you know, the proper terminology is a competitive process, because I just don't see it. What is someone going to offer more? You know,
Well,
somewhere else.
But I think we don't know if we don't give the process the chance to
flush that out,
to proceed. And you know what? We could end up, again, not suggesting this is what we would do, but theoretically you could just say, yeah, let's open it up for 30 days, and we don't get another applicant.
Right.
You know, so you know that's certainly a possibility.
But in that 30-day time period, they can understand better the issues with the building and decide if they even want to move forward with that building going forward and invest that money.
Guys will say they are dedicated to this building. They signed a lease letter of intent. They're ready to start the process. And I'm sorry, I don't know what her name was that just spoke. And she mentioned an EDC process to do this, but I believe we already issued a license under this legislation without that process intact. So you're kind of putting this applicant at a disadvantage here if you
that was in March, right? When we did that last one?
Yes.
I know it was like, yeah, it was March, I
March,
believe.
March.
Yeah, so it was 2 months after it was announced, and this is 5 months after it was announced, so I mean, there has been some time.
All right,
We just have to take a vote.
I think we do.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, okay. I think there are residents here who want to speak in favor of this, so I think they should be heard.
Sure.
Yeah, see if it
I mean,
We're looking at you guys.
Assuming it's you? Kevin?
Hi. Hello.
I know these people, they're good businessmen in town, and I think they deserve to take the application. I think they'll do good for us, actually.
All right.
And they're well-liked in the community as well.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
All right, thank you.
Could you just state your name? so-
Walter Thompson.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Actually, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So, this is probably in the paperwork somewhere, but is this your first business, or do you have other businesses that you operate? Can you just give us a little background on your background and other businesses you own?
Sun Market right across the street, my family used to own since 2007.
Okay.
And these are my relatives who we sold it to. We have hotels all around Cape and New Hampshire. So now it's our hometown. My house is right down the street.
Okay.
So there was an application open, and we thought it's a good opportunity, and we know everyone that's over here, including the whole town as well. So that's the only reason we're investing money over here again.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Tony Merlino. I've been a neighbor of theirs. I own the Cigar Man shop, which is next to Sun Market there. And they've always been great neighbors, good business people, and they'll be a good support for the town.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Me, I sometimes frequent the Sun Market, sometimes after my media center, and the Patels are good people and they will do good business for the town.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Is there any other public comment? If not, we'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
I had a question, if I may.
Yes.
I know you mentioned Sun Market and some other hotels. Do you also have other liquor stores, or are they regulated?
No.
Okay, so this would be a first?
This will be our first liquor store.
Yeah.
I have an experience over here in Sun Market. And it's a liquor store that opened after so long, so that's the only reason we are interested in opening it here.
Okay, but it would be your first experience in the regulated industry through the ABCC?
No.
All right. So you have a liquor license now?
No, I have it in process for our hotel for liquor license on premises.
Okay.
That's what we have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously, we close the public hearing. All right, now, I'd like to take a vote.
I will make a motion to, see if I get this right. I will make a motion to approve the application of Shri, and I apologize for mispronunciation, Shri Jalaram LLC, DBA Old Colony Wine and Spirits, manager Parth Patel, for a new Section 15 off-premises all alcohol beverage license available pursuant to special legislation, Chapter 364, Acts of 2022, at 376 Old Colony Road, Norton, Massachusetts.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Denise? So it's approved.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
very much.
Congrats.
Good luck.
Congrats.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
is Jennifer here? Read
No, she's online.
wild green cards.
Do you want to leave the, you can leave it? All right. Jen, I'm gonna go a little out of order.
Getting whiplash.
Sorry. We have two tremendous coaches here that I'd like to.
Thank you, guys.
Show our recognition.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do
All
that.
right. Coach Coleman, Coach Francis, would you like to come up?
No, they're over this. Do I just read them from here?
Yeah, you're right. Delegating.
Whereas we are here today to express special recognition of Jeff Francis and to honor him for his distinguished 10-year career coaching the Norton High School wrestling team. And whereas Jeff Francis has proven himself to be a valuable asset to the Norton High School varsity wrestling program with an incredible 242-44-2 record, 30 championships, and many Tri-Valley League All-Stars over 10 years. I hope those numbers are right.
Sounds good to me.
And whereas Jeff Francis has worked constantly for the betterment of the Norton High School wrestling program and inspired the youth participating in the program, and whereas Jeff Francis has worked constantly to encourage and motivate the youth athletes to excel academically as well as physically, earning the Norton High School wrestling program the MIAA Gold Level Academic Excellence Award for the last 8 years, several sportsmanship awards over the years, and whereas the team of Town of Norton wishes to express its sincere appreciation of Jeff Francis for his dedication to the outstanding performance of his duties during his tenure, and whereas this proclamation was presented to Jeff Francis to serve as a reminder that although he is retiring, he will always be remembered as a valued coach dedicated to the success of the Norton High School wrestling program and its athletes. Now, therefore, we, the Town of Norton Select Board, and on behalf of the citizens of Norton, do hereby present this proclamation to Jeff Francis as a testimonial to the faithful and dedicated services which he has performed for the past 10 years, with our best wishes for continued success and happiness in the future. So Meg needs to sign these, yeah. I'll read, Coach.
I second that.
Whereas we are here today to express special recognition to Pat Coleman and to honor him for his distinguished 17 years career coaching the Norton High School wrestling team. And whereas Pat Coleman began his career in Norton in 2001, coaching interested youth wrestlers at the nearby YMCA facility, and grew interest in the community until he began a wrestling program at the Norton High School in 2006 at the JV level. And whereas Pat Coleman has proved himself to be a valuable asset to the Norton High School varsity wrestling program with an incredible 376 wins, 91 losses, and 2 ties?
Ties.
Yeah. 40 championships and 91 Tri-Valley League All-Stars over 15 years. And whereas Pat Coleman has worked constantly for the betterment of the Norton High School wrestling program and inspired the youth participating in the program, and whereas Pat Coleman has worked constantly to encourage and motivate the youth athletes to excel academically as well as physically, earning the Norton High School wrestling program the MIAA Gold Level Academic Excellence Award for the last 8 years, several sportsmanship awards over the years, and whereas Pat Coleman has received numerous Coach of the Year awards from Tri-Valley League over the years and was inducted to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame for a lifetime service to wrestling. And whereas the Town of Norton wishes to express its sincere appreciation to Pat Coleman for his dedication to the outstanding performance of his duties during his tenure, and whereas this proclamation is presented to Pat Coleman to serve as a reminder that although he is retiring, we will always be remembered as a valued coach dedicated to the success of Norton High School wrestling program and its athletes. Now, therefore, we, the Town of Norton Select Board, and on behalf of the citizens of Norton, do hereby present this proclamation to Pat Coleman as a testimonial to the faithful and dedicated services which he has performed for the past 17 years, with our best wishes for continued success and happiness in the future.
Yay, Coach Coleman, Coach Francis.
Sorry. And I just want to personally add, because both Coach Francis and Coach Coleman coach both my boys, and
Thank you.
it's just an incredible experience to be part of the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's been a ball.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna miss you.
Thank you.
See you around.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge past President Tony Pacino, new President Denise Luciano. Nicholas is here, one of our former wrestlers, class 2019, and Diane, who's done so much to help us with the program, because it's not just us, it takes a village. And we appreciate all the support we've had from parents and administrators. We've been really fortunate, right from the superintendent and the principals, the athletic director, on down.
to our biggest
Number
fan,
one
Peter.
fan.
Peter Wiggins. Thank you, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Better see you guys next year. Better see you guys to meet next year. Absolutely. I'm gonna miss your voice. Of the boosters.
Yep.
All right. Mike Edens, we're gonna switch now to appointments, resignations, and retirements.
You want to skip around some more?
No, it's actually order, starting from the beginning.
Oh, my goodness.
What is it? Next motion?
Yep, that's right.
All right.
Mike.
All right, so the first appointment is the Serped Commission representative, and Sandy Allhead has said that she would like to be reappointed. She's interested in being reappointed to that position.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
To my knowledge, Sandy has been an outstanding representative of the town, so without any objection, I'll make a motion to appoint Sandy Allerhead, reappoint Sandy Allerhead as the 2023-2024 Serpent Commission member.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
And on the Joint Transportation Planning Group, the JTPG representative, Jared Ferrara would like to be appointed as our rep, and I would be the alternate.
You want to be the alternate?
We have a motion to approve.
Yeah, I'll make, I'm sorry, I'll make a motion to approve Jared Ferrara as the Joint Transportation Planning Group representative, and Mike Eunice as the alternate Joint Transportation Planning Group representative.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
You need to appoint a member of your board to be the Capital Improvement Committee rep.
Are there any shows of interest for this committee? Capital Improvement Committee, going once? Alec, you're interested?
Sure.
All right.
I'll make a motion to appoint Alec Rich III as the Select Board representative for the Capital Improvements Committee.
And I will second, as long as you don't tell his wife I said that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously.
If you didn't volunteer, we're gonna volunteer you anyway.
I was getting that. We have a request, the police chief is here, a request for an appointment for a civilian control officer.
Good evening. So, as you know, through police reform, we no longer have the ability to hire special police officers, so we still have a need to supplement traffic control, so we started a civilian traffic control unit that we're kind of looking at to be our farm club, getting people who might have an interest in either police or public safety to get involved. And tonight I just come before you to ask for the appointment of Jake Braga. There'll be probably one or two other appointments before or around July 1st, but I'd like to do that tonight as things are starting to get a little busy.
I know the family well, and I can speak of Jake, so.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Jake Braga as a civilian traffic control personnel.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, unanimous.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Chief.
much. All right, moving right along.
I will make a motion to, make a motion to approve the minutes for April 27, 2023, and executive session on April 27, 2023 for the Norton Select Board.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I'm just gonna abstain because I
You
was there.
abstain, right, you weren't here. Terrific, those are approved. Now we go to licenses and permits. And again, this is just a reminder, any license or permit in the packet has already been approved by the fire chief and the chief clerk.
I don't think any of these were anything
There are
crazy,
private
right?
subjects, just like graduation.
Graduation events?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll do it. I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine liquor license to Melissa Sullivan and Brian Cote for a private event at Everett Leonard Park from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, June 24th, 2023.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine liquor license to Elias De Silva to be utilized for a private event to be held at 185 North Washington Street, Norton, Massachusetts, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday, May 28th, 2023.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, unanimous.
And I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine liquor license to Heath Womble for a private event at the Everett Leonard Park from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, August 12th, 2023.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Oh, aye, sorry. I missed it.
You're funny.
Announcements, Norton Alerts. Just stay up to date on what's happening.
That's it.
I think that was something that we had discussed earlier, and that was just to let residents know if they want to know what's going on. They can go onto the town website and they can sign up for certain notices. So for events that happen or meetings that are scheduled, if people are interested in the select board meetings, they can be notified. So anytime you post anything, agenda or anything, they get a notification. Just a way to stay up to date on things.
Like, I was gonna ask that Norton, I don't even know what you would call it, a pamphlet that came out in the mail? What was that from?
Was it a book?
Yeah, not a book, it was like a,
Was it like a phone book?
yeah, but smaller. What is that?
I know that there's a gentleman that goes around and does a little book.
Yeah, there was a letter from you in the front, okay.
Mark Hatchie.
Mark, yeah, Mark does that.
Yeah,
He does that all.
That's a private
3 towns.
publication.
Yeah.
okay, I'd never seen it before, and it just came in the
Yeah.
mail. So obviously it's paid advertisements and stuff, so.
And just another thing on Norton Alerts itself, if you don't sign your cell phone up for Norton Alerts, you're not gonna get an alert when we have an issue happening in town. So, people want to be notified of water main breaks or whatever, like, you have to go on and put your cell phone number in there. They have all the landlines, but not cell phones.
And you can also sign up your email to get emails and
Text messages.
Yeah, text messages, and it's more than just emergencies. It's for, like you said, for meetings or whatever. So I think at some point it might be a good idea to see what more we could be putting out on those alerts as well. So just a thought, because I'm sure there's more that we'd be doing to communicate. So, but highly recommend people sign up for that.
That's right, sign up because I use Norton Alerts all the time, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter.
And also I keep Norton informed too.
All right. You want to talk about the carriage donation?
So, the Norton Historical Society just wanted people to be aware, they go to the Memorial Day Parade, they'll see the Wheaton carriage. Excuse me, Wheaton donated that to the Norton Historical Society. They've done a great job at fixing it up, and they're going to have it in the Memorial Day Parade this year. It was restored by an Amish craftsman it cost them $24,000 to refurbish that, and it does look great. They've really done a good job with that.
Where are they storing it, Mike?
What's that?
Yeah, that's
Where
a
are they
good
storing it?
In the garage, I think it's
It's at the
stored in
president's
garage.
house right now.
It's at the
In the
president's
garage.
house.
But it's going to go, after the Memorial Day Parade, it's going to go back to the Historical Society's shed. Bob Kimball's redoing it, and it's going to be the museum, so to
right?
speak.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
That's very cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Just I have another announcement that was in my
Yes,
packet,
please.
so I'm going to read it. There is just a reminder that the Norton Veterans Council Carnival will be occurring June 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. And it will be at the Henry A. Yell Elementary School. The veterans groups around town are selling tickets. Just wanted to remind everybody about that event coming up. We'll probably do another announcement about it as well. But again, the Norton Veterans Council Carnival, June 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th.
If I could add to that, we're also looking for volunteers to work, ticket booths and whatnot, things of that nature.
Great.
So they can get all the, either me directly or Don Chappes or Gary Cameron.
Awesome.
All right. We're going to review and discuss town meeting articles. Why would we vote? It's Monday, by the way.
Yeah.
Steve had something he wanted to announce.
Oh, did Steve have an
He
announcement?
did, I'm sorry.
Do I?
We just read through them and forgot about you, Steve.
Yeah.
So we're on the town meeting articles.
Yep.
I'm not sure what there is to.
We can go through, I can announce it during.
No,
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is the community cookout for Norton and surrounding towns of the Trinitarian Congregational Church, 2 Pine Street. It's Tuesday, May 16th, so it's this coming Tuesday. Cornhole and social time at 5 o'clock. Dinner is served from 5:30 to 6:30. It's a free event, and all are welcome.
Free. That's the operative word. It is a free
There it
event.
is.
Yes. All right.
All right, so
Yes.
I can just give you an update since you last voted on articles. You voted on most of them. The Finance Committee last night did approve Article 4, collective bargaining agreements. And they recommended that the town vote to transfer $206,893 from free cash, $10,810 from water enterprise receipts, and $1,922 from sewer enterprise receipts to fund contracts with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the clerical union. And I'll say AFSCME is the name. AFSCME Highway, AFSCME Water and Sewer, the Norton Police Association, the Norton Firefighters, and also the Steelworkers CNB. And they also did vote again on the operating budget. They reconsidered their previous vote. And on the budget, they added $707,500. And this is for, to be added to the school budget. This would come out of stabilization. So
They recommended that?
they did recommend that last night. The school department was on and met with them. And so this means that this budget recommendation would require a 2/3 vote at town meeting because it's taking money out of stabilization. And the Finance Committee also did emphasize the importance of stabilization and getting to our 5%. They're going to work towards putting this money back in the fall.
But the school committee, did they ever agree that they were going to come back in the fall and ask
No,
for
they
more
didn't.
money?
I think because there's like special education mandates, they can't
Right, no,
make
I
that
get
promise.
that.
Yeah.
I think
So-
their intent is to try, hopefully not have to come back in the fall, but if there was any emergency.
It's what it is.
I like the intent of that request, but I think it's impossible to say, we're not going to come
No,
back.
I know. You don't know what's going to happen. Get around to COVID.
And also, last
What-
night.
I'm sorry, what was the FinCom vote on it?
Say that again.
Was the FinCom unanimous on it?
10-1. And also last night, they voted to reconsider, they had previously voted in support of the article to ban water and sewer fees for town-owned properties. And then they reached out to Water and Sewer and asked if they'd vote on that at their meeting, which was Tuesday night. And the Water and Sewer Commission voted to waive the tie-in fees for the senior center and the town hall. And so then the finance committee reconsidered their recommendation and voted not to recommend Article 12. So in other words, that will not be moved by them on the town meeting floor.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the intent of this article?
Voted, I'm trying to think if they voted.
No action? Is that what I was going to ask?
I'm trying, let me see.
Because
They voted 5-4 last time to recommend, right, so
They
it's
did.
close before.
And then I think the intent was to just sort of codify that this would be the case going forward.
Right.
But maybe they're thinking that's not necessary. It's not necessary to get it, because it's a bylaw change, right, Mike?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they voted not to recommend.
Not to recommend.
I don't see why we wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I don't see why.
It should, yeah. Sorry.
I don't see what the problem is in codifying it, right? And saying, you know, it's sort of an obvious thing, but why not?
Yeah, because we're gonna have more than just those two buildings coming down the line. I mean, it's,
Right.
it just makes sense. So we already voted on this, right?
You
To
did.
recommend?
Yep.
So would we move it at town meeting? Or would it be?
You could. Anyone can move it at town meeting if they want.
Do we have to have a unanimous vote to move it?
No, any resident, your
So
resident, any resident could move.
So we don't. So since we already voted on it, we don't need to reconsider it or anything. We just.
Who brought the article forward to begin with? We did?
Yes.
All right.
Do we need to take any votes on this or no? No. All right.
So do we need to? Do we
don't
need
need
to?
to
We voted on everything, right?
Yeah.
Are we all done, Mike?
I think we're done.
Just the whole packet.
We're gonna just beat the dead horse.
Pretty close to it.
It's our last chance.
I think we're
You
done.
did not vote on the budget and you did not vote on collective bargaining agreements.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to recommend Article 4, collective bargaining agreements. I don't have the amount.
What's the-
I mean, just yeah. I guess just to be official.
Is it 206? 206, 893?
206, 893?
Yep.
All right, so make a motion to recommend Article 4 for the town to raise and appropriate or transfer $206,893 to fund and implement collective bargaining agreements between the town, and the various unions for the period beginning July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, and for general collective bargaining settlement purposes or take any other action relative thereto.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Unanimous?
And then,
69, 258, 186.
69, 258, 196?
186, is that right?
186.
That's right, that's right.
What do you got?
Is that the right one?
What is it?
Perfect.
Isn't it the 69?
Yeah, 69,
Yeah.
258.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, 258.
180, unless it changed.
This one from tonight says 69,
this says
965,
965.
686.
Oh, right, because that adds the 700 and. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, I got it. All right, I'm ready. All right, so make a motion to recommend I'll just say, the operating budget for the town in the amount of $69,965,686.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Unanimous. There you go.
And we have all the articles from the special are done?
Yeah, those are all done.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing all that before I joined.
Manager, May 15th town meeting, non-act will be there.
It's like the special.
All right. The next list of stuff on the agenda, I just wanted, and you know, we think we've all talked about this amongst ourselves, but I just want to get some policy stuff cleared up. I want to get us on the same page. I don't want to hold things up as we did with the HCA. I want this to, just to get some clarity so we can actually just do the work that we were elected to do. So, thank you, Joe, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we have a bunch of things. We don't have to take a vote on these tonight. I'm going to put them out there. We want to have some good discussion about them, and then, you know, Joe's here to answer any questions, and we'll just see where we land. So again, I just want to start these conversations, and if we decide we want to vote, we can do that as well. First and foremost is the Select Board Code of Conduct. This, I believe, and Mike Units, correct me if I'm wrong, was already, it was taken from another town, and KP Law has already signed off on it. Is that correct, Mike?
I don't want to speak for KP Law.
So.
I want to say, we have Jennifer on. Jennifer would remember.
I think it's been previously reviewed.
Yep.
The one thing I can't say definitively is depending on when it was reviewed versus case law. There's some nuances because there has been some recent case law. There's a Southborough case talking about folks' free speech issues and things like that at meetings. So I don't know chicken or the egg, which one, but most of what I've seen in here is pretty standard.
All right, but whatever we end up with, we will do a final review with you all, so, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to derail specifically all these, you know, talking about these policies, but I know we're going to also talk about the town council policy that we recently adopted. And so, you know, I think it would be good for us, I don't know, we don't have to have this conversation now, but for us to have a conversation as a board about the process we go through of developing, researching, suggesting policies, the process for how it comes before the board, and then what do we do after it comes before the board as far as, you know, I know the school committee does, you know, a first reading of a policy, and then that gives them time for everyone to sort of digest it, come back and at the next meeting and make suggestions. You know, I think, you know, I just think we've got a lot of these that we want to get done, which I think is a good idea. And, you know, maybe if we could, you know, maybe get down some sort of standard questions that we want to answer before we adopt a policy.
Yep.
So for example, I'm thinking, you know, if the policy affects any other boards, you know, getting feedback from the other boards. Or if, you know, also a question I had for KP, do we have any leeway with OML to you know, try to make suggestions to a policy, or does all of that have to be done in open session? Just because it's really inefficient to do it that way. I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So I just wanted to maybe just put out for everybody's thoughts about a process. You know, another example is, you know, when we have a policy, where did it come from? You know, is it from the old crusty blue book that we have at town hall? Is it from another town? Did somebody, you know, come up with it themselves? You know, how did it come before us? And I think, you know, if we could come up with kind of a standard list of things we want to have before we vote on something, or at least before we start to really dig into it, that would be
I think that's a great starting point. And I apologize in terms of just throwing all of this on the agenda, but as I'm thinking through and just the lessons I've learned over the last year on things that have gotten in the way of doing our work, and so to your point, Kevin, that maybe this isn't about everyone has stuff in there, but maybe we do go through those questions And then people can revisit if they've already, obviously everyone got this stuff in advance, and if people have specific questions, it'd be a good time now. But let's, yeah, we can certainly vote at it another, it's not gonna change anything. So with that, shall we start? I guess I should say, are there other areas or other things that we can think of that did not include?
Madam Chair, I think these are all good starts. I think these are all things that we've kind of either had questions about or have caused issues. I think it's fair to say. So I think it's good to start with a small list. I don't think my recommendation would be not to add any more, because I think we could get overwhelmed and then none of them will get done. So, start with a small list and go from there.
And my recommendation would be put that list on a lighter agenda night to go through. So we have time to go through everything. And like Kevin said, point by point, we can't do it offline, so we have to do it during the meeting.
Well, we don't know, can we?
No,
we knew that answer before.
I was like,
I mean, you can individually do it offline and collect all your thoughts and make all your notes, but you then would need to come back to a meeting to discuss them amongst yourselves.
Prepare.
So come back, prepare, so you don't have to do everything at the meeting, but you just can't share your ideas and thoughts until you're here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
If someone on the board had some ideas, could they get those ideas to me, and then I could get them to you to see if there's some legal issue with those ideas?
Prior to...
Rather than have them prior to the meeting?
There's nothing that inhibits any individual member, working with the town manager and town council to try to get some feedback before you spend a whole lot of energy, going down a rabbit hole that ultimately is, not going to get you where you want to be. So that you can certainly do a lot of that behind the scenes things.
All right, so why don't I suggest this? Why don't we come up with the questions that are sort of standard, but just, I thought that was a great example. And in addition, let's just holistically have a conversation about each of these subjects and sort of say what is the purpose and what we're trying to accomplish, and just move it from there.
So if I can suggest, Madam Chair, through what they said, if we have suggestions or questions on this, to get them to Mike directly, and then he can present them to town council before we go through it.
And Madam Chair, I'd be happy to, if you want me to draft up a list of sort of standard process for a new policy, I'd be happy to come up with a draft of that.
Policy for a policy.
Policy for a policy. That's very That's very government OS, isn't it?
I was gonna say, I have less questions and more like suggested red lines kind of, right, to reduce ambiguities or conflicting language, that kind of thing. So just, do I red line, send my suggested red lines to Mike? It sounds like that's what we're...
Yeah.
That could work, right? I mean,
And then I can get to Joe.
Yeah. That being said, I still want to just, again, what the intent of each of these are, so we're very clear, so we're not going off the rails.
Yep, I agree.
Sounds good.
Code of conduct, again, we just want to set a standard for how we treat each other in meetings, but also how we are treated and how we treat our guests. And I think it's helpful to just have some, some standards that we just must adhere to. So that's all I have to say on that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on code of conduct?
Madam Chair, are these sort of typical?
They are. Particularly when you're dealing with elected officials, they can be difficult to enforce. There's no real enforcement mechanism for a lot of them. So you are relying on your fellow elected officials to follow along. So, I don't know that we can say that they're requirements because of that, right? They're more of guidelines or expectations for, of an elected official. So, we see these towns like to have these. It maybe serves as a reminder to folks of look, this is what your position is now. So this is how we, hope everyone will conduct themselves. There are pieces now with certain changes in case law that you know, restricting how people can, what they can say or how they say it. There's some limitations on that, but again, you know, these are, I've always seen these as more like aspirational as opposed to like a set of rules that somehow if you violate them, you know.
Right, there's punitive damages.
Right, there really isn't, but I think they're still helpful and they can really kind of, and the one thing that is effective with some of these though, when we're not talking about individualized conduct, right, but we're talking about how is a board going to interact with the public or others as a sort of an official policy. For example, you know, who is authorized to speak on behalf of the board? Like, what are your expectations? Now, those are in a different category because now we're not talking about free speech. We're talking about how is the board going to behave or conduct itself and communicate its, you know, thoughts, ideas, decisions to others, as opposed to having, you know, 5 individuals just doing their own thing. So in that regard, these can be very helpful.
All right. Next, social media policy. What?
I was gonna say, this one gets tough. I know, like, we've had situations dealing with this with employees, and there's, Joe could talk about what rights people have. And
Right, well, it's following along the same line I just mentioned. You know, the social media and the free speech issues for employees is a more developed area of case law. You're seeing some now more recent decisions, like the Southport decision, when we're talking about what folks are saying at, say, town, like a public meeting, you know, like your meeting, for example. But we've been dealing with these issues on the employment side for a long time. And, you know, there's that line between, you know, they don't give up all of their First Amendment rights, their ability to speak freely in social media in this day and age, whether we like it or not, is now part of that. So there's that kind of fine line between when they're speaking out on matters of public concern as an individual, and that's where they have, you know, certain constitutional protections. And then there's, you know, they're talking about things that perhaps are work-related, that they're not authorized to speak on behalf of, and they're saying things publicly that, you know, they're not, that it's outside.
But that's for employees. Can you speak, is it similar for elected?
It is, yeah, so
All right,
similar concepts, right? It's the difficulty when you start talking about elected boards and appointed boards to some extent, is that, you know, how do you enforce them, right? I mean, you can have your standards, you can have your expectations and your policies, but they're still elected officials, so, you know, short of people speaking at the ballot box, there's not really a heck of a lot you can do. But again, you should still have a policy, because a lot of times people just don't even understand what those lines are, right? They're just not, they think like, well, why can't I speak on this behalf? So having a policy, for example, that says, look, if you're gonna speak on social media, you have to make it clear that you're not speaking for the board. You're speaking as an individual, and you're not speaking on behalf of whatever board they happen to sit on. And those types of things are very helpful.
And we're not bound to reply on social media. That drives me nuts. I don't have it's my personal page, and I don't put anything on there. It's my family and my close friends, and then I'm getting asked if I'll get called out.
Yes.
And I don't respond. I don't feel that that's appropriate.
So that's another area that's now developing, is, you know, this area of whether or not you are creating a public space for dialogue as a public official. When we have, you know, so certainly one of the issues that will come up with town-sponsored web pages, social media sites like the town Facebook page, you're not obligated necessarily to leave the comments on, but once you do, you have some limitations on your ability now to decide, like, well, I don't like that comment because it's, you know, straying a little too far from what I would say is like courteous behavior. Well, that's not going to work anymore. And so if your personal social media page is in place where you're engaging in your discussions as a public official, you know, you're probably fine with that. But when you take that into a forum where you are, you know, speaking out about matters that are coming before the board and you're using it that's when we get into some of these issues where people get blocked and they can no longer comment, but other people can. That can be a problem. So having a social media policy is helpful in just trying to set out what you want your social media interactions to look like.
And can it be different for each individual on the board?
Well, certainly every individual member also has certain rights, right? So you have that ability. It's a matter of whether or not the impacts on them, though, potentially, if they're using it as a space to engage with the public on official matters that they deal with, you know, as a sort of forum for, you know, sort of like a meet the candidate night, but you have it 24/7 as a social media page, you know, you're going to be held to those same types of standards, that you can't pick and choose who you're going to let comment. Like it becomes a difficult thing for you to control in that regard to some extent. And on the town side of things, though, you know, the town can have a set, this is what we want on our pages, this is who can post official town you know, notices or what have you, so that again you don't have, you know, 5 different people having access to the same thing and we're all kind of going in different directions. So again, having a policy that kind of spells out how you want things to work is going to be helpful. But unfortunately, it's an area of the law that's developing almost like daily. There's new issues, new cases. It's just, it's hard to keep up with, really. It's tricky.
I don't have any other questions.
No, I just wanted, so for clarity, like if I have a Facebook page that's Denise Luciano and I post cute pictures of my kids and vacation photos and talk about my work day, whatever, and then I've got a Denise Luciano Select Board page and I use it to post agendas and emergency numbers and events happening around town. I can't treat my Denise Luciano Select Board page as it's a personal page, right? Even if I put the disclaimer, like these are my personal thoughts,
well,
I need to treat it as
you could
though-
put a disclaimer that those are your personal thoughts. That's helpful, getting back to the sort of the board policy, right?
Right.
That's you indicating to the public, I am not speaking for the board. I'm speaking
Right.
for myself as an individual select person. And that's a good thing. Like, that's one of the things that often boards, when they're looking at these policies, they're discussing, right? That, like, if we're going to communicate, because not every vote is unanimous, so you may have a differing view that you want to express out there, and so when that occurs, you know, it's a good thing for, if this is not the official position of the board, that be disclaimed. But if you're using that page, though, as your select person page,
as my role.
You're creating that sort of almost public space for them to communicate, and I can't give you an ironclad legal opinion at this point on any of this stuff because of how it's so much in flux these days. But you are creating a space where people can interact with you. So how you interact back or limit certain things, that's where some of these First Amendment issues can kind of come into play. So it's still kind of a developing area.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you speak a little bit to, because I noticed this on the Southborough decision, that the Southborough board was named, but then so the Southborough, I think, Board of Selectmen was, and then the town was named? I can't remember, but you know, what's our exposure to something like that? Like if we do, you know, like what could happen to the town if we were found to be in violation of someone's First Amendment rights?
Well, it's a hard...
I don't want Steve to go to jail, is what I'm saying.
I'll tell you right now, people who are blocked are remaining blocked. I don't really care. So
it's civil, not criminal, so we won't go to jail. It really depends on sort of what... I mean, there's so many variables that go in the mix, right, as individuals, because a lot of times when you're seeing those case headings, you know, sometimes just everybody gets thrown in as a defendant, right? Just, we're going to cover all the bases, we're going to name the board, the town, even though the case law is clear, like if it's the Board of Selectmen in the town, it's the same thing. There is no legal entity, Board of, Select Board of North, it doesn't exist. It's the town. Individually, if you've done things in your official capacity, that's still the town as well. It's case law to support that. Sometimes they'll throw in individualized claims against particular individuals, and that's usually a byproduct of that particular person's, actions, because, you might have somebody who's just really engaging and going back and forth, and there's any number of, you could be, if you're saying things that are false and defamatory, there's liability there. If you're cutting off from somebody's rights to free speech, it's civil rights violations type claims, but it really would depend on all of the facts and circumstances. What's the level of harm? What exactly did you do? So.
Right, but again, it's the town is the liability, right? Not the individual, so.
Yeah, to a certain degree, right? So that you have certain, generally speaking, claim gets filed against the town as well as individual board members. Your insurance company's gonna come in and defend, and they defend everybody. And if there's a judgment, they pay the judgment. However, if you have this rogue board member that's really doing things that really aren't within the scope of them functioning as a select board member, and they're now starting to stray into just, bad conduct that's really outside the scope, you start getting into areas where they're creating liability that really has no tie back to their official position, and there could be liability. But you in most cases, you kind of have to try to get to that point, or you have to do really things that are outside the scope.
So to add on, I'm sorry. No, to add on to that, there's a huge difference between blocking somebody and then conducting yourself completely inappropriately. I mean, that's two ends of the spectrum.
Right. That's why I'm saying it's a hard question to answer, because there's so many variables along the way that if you just change one of the facts, it's going to change kind of the answer. You kind of have to look at the whole picture.
But I think that's again, and maybe that's why we start with the code of conduct for the board, because it's not just how we, it's how we treat each other, not just here at these meetings, but outside of here. And I think it's, we do need some sort of agreement and sort of standard. So we do represent the town uniformly, whether we agree on things or not. That's nothing to do with it. It's just, we can't, I'll just say it. We can't have another year like we just had. I mean, that was just a hard year. So,
and Madam Chair, if I could ask Mike, do we have a town hall page, right? And do we have a policy around how that page is used or anything like that at this point? I mean, is that something we should be sort of including in all of this? Is like who can post on the town page and
definitely
who can post on alerts and all that kind of stuff? Would that be helpful for you?
Definitely.
Okay. All right.
anything else on social media?
The thing I would say, if I may, Madam Chair, just to that last, the last question, the policy, the draft policy that I believe Mike had passed along does contain components for both of those. Okay. So there's a piece about you using social media, and then there's people using town-sponsored social media. Okay. Right. So you kind of look at those issues really.
Great.
Yeah, so back to Kevin, but there's nothing in place now for the non-employees, right, Mike? Through the chair, I'm sorry.
No, okay. Once it's first place.
Alan, did you have anything?
No. All right.
All right. And Mike, this was yours, the workplace violence prevention policy.
In all these policies, as the chair said, we reached out to other communities and put these together. And hopefully, I know, as Joe said, things change over time, so hopefully Joe could review these and see if there's anything that would put in here that has changed. And I know one of the things that changed recently was the case on the language that people use and how you can't restrict, when people are. But this is, what we want to try and do is have a policy for the employees, but also for people that come in the town hall, to treat people in a respectful way. And we can't, as Joe said, we can't keep people out, but we can regulate, make sure that people that are working there are treated.
Right.
Aren't feeling threatened.
So just a point of clarification. So the select board is now the unofficial HR department?
That's another conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation.
No, I think these are great, especially for the employees, yeah.
Yeah, so this one, I don't know, this one wasn't specific for us. So is this something that you wanted us to vote on?
Yeah, just, if you can review it and let me know, and if you had any concerns or felt that there was anything else that you wanted added, and then eventually vote on it.
And Joe, you've seen this, right? Or
I'm not sure, though, I don't know if that was in the packet, but I'll take this one. The one thing, I think, if I may, Madam Chair, what the town manager was just alluding to, unfortunately, when you're dealing with members of the public, right, they have a right to come in the building, pay tax bills, conduct business, what have you. There's no law against somebody being not a nice person when they come into town hall.
There should be.
And so there's some limitations on what you can do. It doesn't mean they can make threats and, and those types of things. That's a different issue. But they don't have to be respectful. They don't have to be, so there's limits on that. But having a policy that at least for your employees who may be feeling threatened, and like what do I do with that information? Who do I go to? Those types of things is a very helpful tool, even if in the end you have these standards or expectations, I guess, of how people will conduct themselves when they come into town hall that you may not be able to enforce against the individual members of the public, but you can have ways of mitigating the effects on employees, and that's equally as important.
As most of you know, I own a property management company, and I've had to do these for certain condo properties because of people coming in and being threatening and things like that to other trustees or even my staff. So I think this is very important. Unless there's any objection, I'd move to approve this tonight.
So I would say I do have some just clarifying stuff that I was going to suggest to you, Mike, just to get rid of some ambiguity, like the use of the word employee, to specify that employee means all the parties that are listed up at the top, right? The elected officials, customers, general public, or use some other term to encompass all of them, right? It's like we talk about the purpose of it being to cover all of them, but then in the body of the thing, it just talks about employee only. So maybe we can define a term that encompasses all of that. And then adding some sort of a short circuit, so that way if the perpetrator is the person you're supposed to report it to, you don't have to report it to that person, there's somebody else to report it to instead.
Yeah.
And then my only other comment was in the paragraph on the second page that starts for incidents involving 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 lines down where it starts, as necessitated by the seriousness of the incident. I was just gonna add, or the number or frequency of the behavior. So in other words, if it's not so serious, but it happens repeatedly over and over again, that should trigger the action by town manager. Those are for the most part and then just my own little quirky thing, like the definitions, if you could put like in parentheses, the defined term that you're defining.
So why don't we'll make these changes, and then I think it should still go to KP Law, and then we'll next.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion then.
Just clean up stuff.
Yeah, thanks for
No,
that.
Because I think
that's
Joe
good.
said he wanted some time to look it over.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
I,
okay.
I would like to get it on the next agenda, just so we get it in place, 'cause,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's very important.
Great.
All right, next, this is the whole discussion on town legal counsel request. Just to clarify, so we've been, I think the intent was, we were trying to, the intent was right, and I think some of the interpretation has not been correct. So I want to just make sure before we do anything on it that we understand what we actually approved, because I think there's needs to be points of clarity. So, again, the intent was that we're not going to accrue unnecessary legal fees if, if there is a way for things to be circulated through the town manager, then he can decide, he or she can decide if there are other things that are already going in front of legal that might be, might have already gone through legal, so we're not asking the same questions is what the point was. And then, let me just say, and then what we did not want to intend was to hand tie any committee that does work with council on certain things. And so I think we just needed some clarity on what we actually put, yes.
So Madam Chair, through you, I believe we voted unanimously on this, right? 5-0. And it was a policy that was in place previously. We just updated it, but it wasn't followed. So I think that was, because this goes back to 2017, at least. So this was a policy that was in place that just wasn't followed. And we kind of cleaned up the language, I think, a little bit and voted it unanimously. So I'm a little confused as to why it's back on the
Well, I'll
agenda
tell you,
tonight.
planning board was one that was, you're on planning board. So there's, when there are things that have to go to, if you're working on one particular case, there's gonna be, we did say in the language, my understanding is that the boards can appoint one person that could work directly with our town manager, correct?
No, with the town council.
With the town council directly, and wouldn't have to go through Mike.
If it's an ongoing issue, they don't have to say, can I call town council about this again today? Can I call council? No.
Right.
Yeah, I know at least
You
from
have
my
authority
intentions
to
on it,
handle that.
from my intention of voting this was to make sure that you were involved in knowing who was using town council and for what purpose, and not to
Micromanage.
intercede. No, not to micromanage.
Right.
Just to be aware of it.
Unfortunately, that's how it came across to the.
I thought we were pretty clear when we talked about it.
And it was. So I just want to get clarity, and we might not be changing
Yeah.
anything.
And I think the most important part about it is, someone could be new and they may have a question they want to ask town council. And if they come through my office, I can say, well, we already addressed that 2 years ago.
Exactly.
Here's the opinion that town council gave concerning that. Most cases, if a department had asked me, can I refer this to, it's usually because something has to go to town council. They know. And I don't tell them, no, don't suffer,
Well, one of the biggest things I've seen on.
We just don't want repetitive questions being asked.
Madam Chair, through you, I'm sorry. One of the biggest things I've seen on multiple boards is the question of open meeting law and how it's usually the same question and it's asked repeatedly of town council. So, obviously he's here tonight, so it's a little different. You're here for other things, but if that answer is already in writing somewhere, you can just, exactly what you said. I just said it longer.
Do we like Colton Page, KP? We don't want to give them another $200 for something we already know.
Yeah, there's plenty of, and we have resources out there as well, publication, so is the Attorney General's office, so it's one of the things I would encourage, whenever you have a new board member, to try to give them some of those advanced tools. They can just read through and just understand the open meeting law a little bit, because, it's not something that people are usually used to dealing with in everyday life, obviously. So familiarizing with that stuff kind of answers a lot of those questions.
And I actually don't know the answer to this, but is there any, only serve on one committee. Is there any onboarding for any of these committees? Is there a standard that we do?
When I first got on the planning board, there was an onboarding, but I think it was that first year, and then after that, whoever else came on just was.
A whole nother issue, but clearly, I think there's got to be a better way for us to all work.
100%.
Well, I think I just did it as part of, like, when you first get elected or appointed, there's a state training that you do.
Yeah,
There's
there is.
opening law, Yeah.
Yeah. For the select board, there is, but not for.
I did when I was in the EDC, and I did when I was in the Charter Commission.
Yeah,
as
them,
well.
because not the Select Board Association, but the Mass Municipal Association might have some things that we could refer people to as well.
Yeah, so that's a whole nother
Yeah.
beast that we need to tackle, but.
I think, if I
Yeah, go
can,
ahead.
I think one of the, some of the feedback I had on this was also about employees going to town council, like the planning director and some of those folks, and employees, I don't think.
No, we were just talking
So
about volunteers.
Yeah, because this is, well, I guess, Mike, I could ask you, like, how do employees engage with town
So
council?
if employees need to contact town council, what should they get my permission to do that?
Okay.
And then, once they're on a case, we don't make them let me know every time you're talking to them about that case. But they all ask me first, and then whenever they ask town council for an opinion, they'll CC me on that too, so.
Okay. All right.
Could I just suggest, just so that, I mean, Mike's a busy guy, right? And a lot of these policies have Mike Units as being the person that's the gateway for it, right, the bottleneck. Either making it a notification versus an approval for certain boards that we know I need to engage them for their day-to-day business. Open meeting law questions, I agree, I think those are asked often enough that Mike probably has the question already answered, but like, planning, conservation, and zoning, who are looking at specifically regulations and state regulations to see if it complies, can make it a notification versus an approval. The other question or comment that I had was similarly to the code of whatever policy was, but like kind of like circumvention of if there's a perpetrator that you're trying to ask counsel something about, like a way around not having to go through. Like if you're the bad guy, someone has a question for counsel about you, they don't want to go to you to report it, right? Or to ask for permission to go to town council. Is there someone else they could seek in a not
We
that I
have
think.
an ombudsman, I would never say
Yeah.
that, at work, for that purpose, that there's always an impartial
Right.
body that people can go.
There just needs to kind of be like a circuit breaker if there's a issue, right?
Madam Chair, I think it's probably safe to say that the conversation about an HR person is going to be something where I'd like to talk to the town manager about it at some point. Because that would be generally the person that would be sort of independent.
If I may,
Yes.
Madam Chair, these are sometimes tricky issues, who has access to town council. And different towns do things a little bit differently, but I would say that, one of the things to keep in mind is there are times where issues on some of your other boards or positions other boards are taking on a particular issue are not necessarily in line with what the board's overall goals and objectives for the town might be. So you want to keep in mind that there can be situations where one board's asking for an opinion on something that the board has no real interest, desire, or what have you to pursue. So do you want to do that? I mean, that's a question for you all to answer. Because ultimately, the way we generally function, our default, even in the absence of a policy, and it's good to have a policy so your folks know, our default typically internally is that, we will take direct calls from members of the Board of Selectmen, because ultimately we represent the town as it operates through the majority of the board. We don't represent, the others unless and until somebody says, please assist. And as well as the town manager, town administrator, that's our primary day-to-day contact. So those folks you know, we get calls from them, we take them, we answer questions. That unless you tell us otherwise, that's kind of our fault. If I get inquiries from other people other than that, and it's not an email where Mike's copied, for example, and it says, you know, I talked to the town manager, and, you know, we don't fact check them. You know, if they say, you know, I ran this by the manager, he's copied on the email, you know, we obviously take that at face value. But if I see something come in and Mike's not copied on it, you know, there's a little bit of a red flag that goes up for me, just as, like, I'll follow up with Mike and say, you know, is this authorized? What do you want me to do here? It's because sometimes, depending on what the situation might be, you're not always, you can be working at cross purposes, and then you wind up with an opinion where they use a particular set of facts, and we give an opinion, and then we get a different set of facts when you talk to somebody on the other side, and you get maybe a more complete picture or some additional, and it changes the answer, and you wind up with this dueling opinions. So that can happen where people are essentially fishing for a legal opinion that supports their view, and they're careful about the information that they share so that it kind of steers them in that direction. And so we try not to get drawn into that, and sometimes the safest way is that we have a, you know, a main contact person that's saying, you know, yes or no. I hear you about not wanting like an official approval, but I don't think it sounds more formal than it actually really operates in practice. It's you know, pretty straightforward and simple. Sometimes it's as easy as a phone call or an email. I mean, you have a particular form, and that's fine too, but I just wanted to flag those things.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I think maybe this is maybe a simple conversation with each of the chairs of every board, and just sort of saying, like, they're obviously going to be the go-to person, or they could appoint someone on their board or whatever. But I think we just sort of let them know that, you know, and some of the boards, like we've talked about, are going to be heavier usage than others. We could have some, you know. So
I had not thought about what Joe just said, though. That's really interesting, you know, because, you know, the select board's role is to bring all of the departments together into, you know, one sort of vision, right, for how the town is working together and all that. And if, you know, if we don't kind of know what the other boards are engaging with town council on, and we could have a different idea out there on what we're trying to do, and that could cause conflict. So maybe, in that way, it's good to have a policy. I agree. Yeah.
I do like Denise's suggestion, though, some subject matters being, you know, how we can phrase it differently, where it's not an approval, but it's a notification.
Yeah, kind of carve out just the specific, like, if compliance to state regulation kind of questions, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to do it.
All right.
All right.
Hi, Laura Parker, 4 Allen Drive. Madam Chair, through you, if we could just have town council weigh in on whether he feels the select board has any authority to get a copy of an employee's request for town council.
That's a question for you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my question for you is,
That's not what we're asking.
my question for you is whether or not you want me to answer that question. I don't speak unless I'm asked to, so.
So that's not written in the policy, though?
It is.
Where is it?
So Laura, what was the question again?
Whether or not the select board has the authority to get a copy of the employee's request for access to town council.
So you're specific to an employee. Okay.
Where is that in here?
It says the select board has to be copied on all requests.
So
this one.
It's applicable to employees, and
Other
D
requests.
says a copy has to go to the select board.
So Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if
The
I
select
can.
board chair.
So, yeah, this was kind of one of the questions that I had, because employees are mentioned in the first paragraph, but there's no real, like, and then they kind of breaks down all the rest, right? Like boards and commissions, the select board, commissions and committees, the town manager.
Denise is including everything in
Right.
terms of the labels.
And then there's nothing really specific about employees, so it kind of leaves that out. So I think they kind of all fall under this D category, which is all other requests. So I think, and then it was the select board chair would have to.
Yeah, I think the wording of that question was a little misleading because that question was, can anybody on the select board request a copy of whoever is looking for town council? And that's not the case. It says here that the policy should be submitted to the town manager and the select board chair.
Why would the select board chair need an employee's
So that's the question,
request?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
why would this, yeah.
Well, here's, if I may, so there's, in this case law on this issue, because there's been disputes where you're dealing with indemnification and, somebody that, you have a board that goes out and, say, the planning board, board of health, and they hire their own lawyer. And then they're trying to bill it back to the town. And the case law is pretty clear that the chief executive is the board of selectmen, select board. And essentially you control access to town council because town council is council literally to the town. And so as it operates through its chief executive. So, and there's good policy reasons for that is that, you're spending the town's, money, the legal budget, and how that legal budget gets spent is something that really falls within the purview of the chief executive. So any request to utilize town council, there's nothing confidential as it relates to people within, the town government asking for opinions from town council. We still represent the town. So there's no attorney-client privilege to the individuals. It's still the client is the town, and the chief executive of the town, the client, is ultimately the board. So if you want access to every single legal request, that's your prerogative. There's nothing that should shield those. Now, whether you want to or not is a matter of just policy or even just time. You want all those is a different story, but there's nothing that prohibits it. There's no, if I give an opinion to the planning board, it's to the town. It's not something that I would then say, well, the select board said, well, I'd like to see that opinion given to the planning board. We wouldn't say no.
And so.
To the board.
Madam Chair.
Select board.
So when it comes to employees, are we stepping over a line where we're getting involved in sort of the day-to-day operation of the town? And I guess maybe that might be kind of.
That's where HR would come into it.
Well, right. I guess the question becomes why you're asking, right? I guess the question is, when you're asking for the information, sometimes there is that line, and I believe it's in your charter as well, it's in a lot of charters about the board, select board not getting involved in day-to-day administration of the town, leaving it to the town manager. That's generally why you have a strong town manager. So sometimes that information can be sort of quote-unquote need to know, but if you're trying to figure out, well, where's all our money going in the legal budget? I mean, that's a legitimate basis for you to be wanting to know who's requesting and trying to control a runaway legal budget, for example. If it's for some other reason, it's just like a fishing expedition, then, then the board itself really should be weighing in, as opposed to an individual board member.
And as far as employees, all the union employees have grievance procedures. So if an employee had some issue, they can file a grievance with their union steward. And then it has a process that it goes through.
But there is sometimes confusion, I think, amongst like employees. They think, well, town council, and can I ask you a question? And that's where it's, well, we advise the town as a client, and oftentimes the question is more of one of a personal nature, whether it's, my contract says this, so can they be doing this? I don't know what to tell you. I can't. Just as a simple example, just to show you how clear the line can be, there are times when the manager's contract comes up, I don't talk to him about that unless the board is authorizing me to do so, right? So he is no longer anyone I would communicate on his contract because he, in that capacity, is operating as Mike Eunice the individual, not the town manager in that scenario. So it's a pretty bright line. It's the role, and the role is always back, from council standpoint, back to the town as it operates through its executive branch.
Mike, not everyone is union though, right? Aren't there some people who are not union?
There are, and I can't say. I'd have to look in the wage and salary plan and see what's in there for that.
And what would they do
There must
that
be a-
they don't have a union rep?
Yeah, I'll have to look. I don't remember. There's only, there aren't many that aren't union.
Other union department heads, there's not a whole lot of non-union folks.
And our department heads are union.
Well, I was thinking like police chief, fire chief.
Yeah, yeah.
So do we want to?
Move on.
Well, in the same vein as the other policies, I mean, we're gonna, I think, we'll, as part of a discussion, review it, whether we want to.
We can always bring it up
Change
again
it, or-
if we want to change it.
We can always bring it up again. My personal view is we reviewed it thoroughly. We voted on it unanimously. I don't see why we would have to change it.
And Madam Chair, kind of what Steve's saying too, I mean, I kind of agree, it's like, put it in place, let's see how it goes.
We're not supposed to agree.
If it doesn't work, I know, if it doesn't work, then we can revisit it and see if there's a better way to do
I
things.
do think we should, though, have a conversation with the chairs of the, and maybe that's another future agenda item where we invite the chairs in and have that conversation, so everyone's on the same page.
Would that be, Madam Chair, through you, would that be something that we could have Mike do? Just speak to each chair, and if they have questions, then they can bring to us?
Say that again.
About the policy. Oh, you weren't, you get an F. No, to just go over the policy with the chairs so that they're aware, you know, because there was some false rumors out there about this, and that, you know, you can clear it up with a quick conversation, rather than have everybody come in here and but if there are further questions, obviously,
Yeah.
you know.
All right.
Discussion and our vote to the.
So you voted in executive session to approve the ASME clerical highway, water and sewer, and the Norton Police Association contracts at your last meeting. And I just ask that you now vote in open session to authorize and approve those contracts.
So Denise wasn't here for that last one. So
Right.
Does she abstain?
I was just
She
going
can
to say
still
I'll
vote.
abstain.
She can still,
Yeah, she can vote.
she can still vote on it.
But I did read them, but I wasn't part of the discussion, so I'll probably abstain.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the ASME clerical, highway, water, sewer, and Norton Police Association contracts.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
Great.
DPW services.
That's just in.
So we gotta authorize.
Intermunicipal, sign the
Okay.
intermunicipal agreement.
So this is an intermunicipal agreement that was approved and signed by the Water and Sewer Commissioners on Tuesday night. And we've never had this in place, and there's places where Norton supplies water to residents in Mansfield, and then there's places in Norton where Norton residents is supplied with water or sewer from Mansfield. And without the intermunicipal agreement, so the problem is that if someone that lives in Mansfield isn't paying their water bill, it's very difficult for us to collect that money. We can't go and lien their property, and so the way this agreement will now work, if someone in Mansfield isn't paying their water bill to Norton, it's gonna become a burden to Mansfield, the town, who will then go after the resident and same Norton.
So just through, Madam Chair, through you for clarification, is there any way to get Mansfield water off of Pine Street?
And so
Anyone-
I ask if the board would just authorize me to sign this agreement.
All right, I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to sign the intermunicipal agreement by and between the town of Mansfield and the town of Norton for municipal water and sewer service.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And this was reviewed by KP.
And the vote on DPW services award.
Do you have it there?
Sorry, coming up. Here we go.
I found it.
You found it, I just found it.
All right, so, this is part of our Southeastern Regional Services Group bid, and this is for line painting and tree trimming and removing. And the request is for chlorinated rubber traffic line painting. A total bid price of $82,148 was received. And for thermoplastic traffic line painting, $5,700. And then Maltby Tree Service was the low bidder for tree removal. And that is $17,000 for standard tree removal and or trimming in town. And standard tree removal or trimming and removing the trees, $30,800 was the low bid on that from Maltby.
Nothing about it, we just go with the lower bid?
Yeah.
That's the recommendation, and tree removals, and tree removal? removals?
So I'll make a motion, can we motion all in one to approve all of these?
Yes.
So I'll move to approve all of the DPW service awards as read.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. All right, now my favorite part of the meeting. With the new member coming on, we're gonna open for discussion about reorganizing. I just wanted to say, when I alluded to this earlier, I think it's really important that we come together this next year and really focus on what we were elected to do, which is, make sure that the town's running as efficiently and effectively as possible. With that said, we all have to, I think we have to work well together, and I think it's important to reshuffle the deck when, after a period of time, so we can all, have different styles and different people leading the board. So with that said, I do not want to run for chair again. I would gladly, no, and in all seriousness, I really want this next year to be about just for us to come together as a board. I think we can put the past behind us and we can start fresh. So that being said, I just wanted to open it up for discussion if there is interest in serving as chair, and then we can talk about the other roles. The two biggest things I think are that you're gonna have to, as chair, and I think having a board that is supportive and helpful and united, I think will make this person's role much easier. And then obviously working closely with Mike Units, our town manager, to really, again, as we're improving these processes and all that, it'll be a lot easier to sort of disseminate the information and make sure that we're all up to speed. And so anyway, that's sort of my 2 cents.
Madam Chair, so I just wanted to thank you for your efforts as the chair over the past year. I don't think it's any secret that we've had challenges, and so I just wanted to appreciate you, and I think you've done a great job of holding this all together for the last year. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to stay on it.
That being said.
So that being said, I would, I'd throw my hat in the ring for chair. I'd certainly, I'd love to do that for this board. I think we have a great group here. I think we all have the town's best interests in mind, and I think I get along with everyone on the board. I respect everyone on the board. And so, yeah, I'd definitely throw my hat in the ring for chair if if you guys will have me. So I'll throw that out.
Yes.
At the risk of a bunch of people's heads exploding, I'm going to nominate Kevin to be the chair of the select board.
I'll second.
Whoa, that was
All
cool.
right, want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion for Kevin and a second. Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Steve for vice.
Okay.
Do you
Well,
do that?
let's do the
Finish
chair
chair
first.
first.
Are there any other nominations for chair? All right, is there a motion to close nominations?
I'll move to close nominations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
All right, all those in favor of Kevin as chair of the select board?
Aye.
All right.
You didn't vote.
I was going to abstain.
So
So it's not unanimous.
Normally, I continue doing it, but I don't see why now that we have a chair, he can handle the rest, correct?
Okay.
Now you need a vice chair and a clerk.
All right,
Yeah.
so just to be clear, not that I didn't want it, but if I came home with another responsibility, my wife said,
Yeah, you're done. You're done. Okay, so we'll open discussion and for vice chair. If anybody does not have any discussion, we can move to nominations.
So discussion?
Any discussion? Okay, all right.
Well, I'm just gonna throw out that I do support the idea of, we know that we've been a divided board, so I do support the idea of us coming together. I think it's super important, and I would also be in favor of Steve as vice chair.
Okay, so we have a nomination from Alec for Steve to be vice chair, and a second from Meg for that, so all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All right, that's unanimous. Great. And then the third officer position on the board is the clerk. I've been the clerk for the last year, and let me tell you, I am exhausted.
You loved every minute.
So you better be ready for the responsibilities. But no, the clerk does have some responsibilities. Some of the more fun things to do actually is like reading announcements and signing certain documents and things like that. But one of the things I will say before anybody nominates anyone or nominates themselves is that one of the things I would like to concentrate on as we move forward is the minutes are great, and Jen does an awesome job of taking the minutes, but would be documenting for us any things that come out of meetings. Like in business meetings, we always have action items. So I would love it if the clerk were responsible for taking down any action items during the meeting and then coming back at the next meeting and talking about any progress. Maybe there's no progress, but at least keeping sort of a running tally of what's going on during the meeting. So I would like that to be the clerk who does that.
So before you
Before you nominate yourself, you are going to have a little bit more responsibility. But so I'll throw it out there if anybody has any nominations for clerk.
So I'll nominate Alex for clerk. Unless you don't want it.
No, okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for Alec Rich to be the clerk. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain? Okay, unanimous.
You get voluntold twice tonight.
All right, so so thank you again to Meg for the last year. And then let's see how fast we can go through the rest of the job. All right, so we have to vote to designate a member of the select board to approve all warrants. I believe that's the chair, is that correct usually? Or
It doesn't have to be
Okay.
anyone that's available.
Okay.
I think.
There's a good
Mr. Chair,
system.
through you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, previously I was, I think, a secondary.
Okay.
Just
Right.
because I'm in town all the time.
Do you want to continue?
Yeah,
to do it?
So-
I do it all online, just so
Okay.
you know, because
Oh.
we
Okay.
get I get two different emails every week, and the first is an explanation of everything, and then the second is the site, so it's super simple.
Okay.
Just FYI.
I'm a big fan of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So do you want to just continue?
No,
just
no, I
continue?
don't.
You have to continue? All right.
I'm just telling you that it's not.
She's done.
I'm telling you, it's not a heavy lift. I'm just
All right,
saying. It's
okay.
just-
That was a sales pitch, not
Yeah, yeah.
not a request to keep the job.
All right. So anyone else want to be the member to approve warrants?
I'm happy to do it if you don't want to, so.
Okay. All right. All right. Can I nominate Steve?
Well, normally the chair would nominate someone.
I'll nominate Steve to approve warrants.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second Steve. No, somebody else.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, Steve, congratulations. You moved up to the primary warrant signer.
Do we need a secondary, right?
Yeah, we do. So we need to designate an alternate member.
Wouldn't that just be you?
Yeah, and I could be the alternate to sign, so.
So I'll nominate Kevin.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, designate me as the alternate member of the select board to approve all warrants. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. And,
You're just showing off.
yeah, I know. Yeah, so I didn't realize I was gonna have to do this one, but the remote participation
Go
policy.
right to the right place.
So, yeah, that's all. So we'll talk about the remote participation policy. So, just for Denise, this was something that we had gotten, I think, at the last meeting? Is that, Steve, you had?
Yeah, it was-
Why don't you kind of fill us in on where we are?
Yeah, it was a reworking of the original policy from before COVID.
Okay.
Basically, I mean, the long and short of it is that it's going to allow remote participation for board members. Initially, you would have to, I'm paraphrasing it here, but there would have to be a reason. You'd have to talk to the chair beforehand. There would be a vote by the board to allow you to participate remotely, and then you can come on remotely and participate fully as a member.
But the
I know
chair
we had to-
cannot chair it.
Yeah, the chair
remotely.
can't chair remotely. And it's something that we used on the planning board, I believe it was right before COVID started. And it was very helpful, especially on the planning board when you need to attend a certain number of meetings.
So we're making a requirement that's higher than what the state is currently requiring, right? By having the board having to approve individual reasons to not appear, or to have remote participation.
Well, this policy is already in place, it's just, it's been laxed since COVID, but I think now's the time to bring it back to everybody in person.
So just if you have a business meeting, then just let Kevin know and.
Right, it feels cumbersome to me to, for the select board, that's fine, but this is applicable to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels cumbersome to me to require an entire board to approve, like, I'm traveling next week, I can't make the meeting, can I get,
I don't
how
think
do you make that work?
thought it was just the
This
chair.
was already in place
I thought it was just the chair,
for,
just to approve, like, you would just let the chair know.
oh yeah,
you're
let
gonna
the
be
chair
remote.
know. No,
It's not even.
maybe I phrased it wrong. So you speak to the chair if you're not going to be able to make the meeting, and then to enable, in order to participate in that meeting, there would have to be just a vote at the beginning of the meeting, just saying, we approve her to participate remotely. It's the policy, again, this policy has been in place for several years.
This policy was approved in October of '21, which was right before.
No, it was, no, 19.
Sorry, 19, sorry,
Yeah,
October of
19.
19. Yeah, so right before COVID.
Right.
Yeah, a few
So
months before COVID.
And it worked, because before that, you couldn't, I mean,
You couldn't participate at
Yeah.
all remotely.
So as a select board, I think that makes sense, but the individual boards and committees in towns, they should be able to vote themselves how they want to utilize remote participation, right? What kind of permission they require for it, based in accordance with the CMR.
So my understanding, maybe Mike or Joe can jump in on this. Right now, we're following the state guidance, correct? We have to follow the state guidance?
So, if I can, we're in this sort of
Gray area?
a funny time frame, right? Because the remote participation guideline policy, the regs, pre-COVID, the old rules, this is what what you were operating and what Selectman Hornsby was referencing. Then COVID happened and they suspended all of these things and they changed up the rules. But recently, those COVID rules, I'll call them, were extended until March of '25, right? So for really the next 2 years, these technically may not matter if the town or the individual boards are going to continue to do what you've been doing, like for example tonight, and have an alternative means for people to engage with the meeting, to see the proceedings through a Zoom link or things like that. In those situations, you're under the COVID rules, and a lot of the things that the hoops you have to jump through, where you're supposed to, have a policy in place, you have to, the chair, you have to have a quorum present, for example, physically in the room, like all those things don't matter. So long as you are following sort of the setup during the next 2 years anyway, where you could hold these hybrid meetings, because right now, if you wanted this entire meeting to be by Zoom, you could all be sitting in your living rooms, right? And it doesn't really matter if you have a quorum present or not. Now, if you were to decide that you wanted a strictly in-person meeting, we're not gonna broadcast it, we're not gonna, then, and somebody wanted to participate remotely, that's pretty much the only time this policy would matter for right now.
Okay.
Just because we're in this space between, we've got an additional trial run, I guess, if you will, because they've only put it to 25, COVID rules, and then if not, we'll be falling back to the pre-COVID rules. And under the pre-COVID rules, the reason why it has to go through the Board of Selectmen ultimately is controlling for all the other boards, whether they're going to be remote, right? So in the pre-COVID land, the board, the select board had to decide, do we want remote participation for any of our boards or not? And it's kind of an all or nothing proposition. So you couldn't have, the board, you couldn't have selective, certain boards, yes, certain ones, it's sort of like an all or nothing proposition. Now, an individual board could say, we don't like remote participation, we want all our members present, and they can just, as a board, decide that's how they're gonna operate. But right now, this isn't gonna have much of an impact for you, except in that limited circumstance I described. Because otherwise, you're just following right now the COVID rules.
Okay.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair, through you, so if the board voted that we were gonna have all meetings in person in town, then this would that supersede? Or
Right now,
we're
for
not
2
able to do
years, boards will have the ability to do that, because you have to authorize, prior to COVID, you had to authorize the other boards to have remote participation available to them.
Right.
The current state law, the modification, at least temporarily, of the open meeting law makes it available to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without having this policy in place.
Okay.
For 2 years.
Kevin.
Yeah.
So it's available by law. If the select board told, and I don't know if this has happened in any towns, if the select board said, no, we don't want any more remote meetings, we want them all to be live, can the select board do that? Or does the state, until 2025, does that state policy?
Right, because the open meeting, it's the latter, right? The open meeting law has been amended to allow for it, for boards to do this under the open meeting law. Prior to the amendments, it was allowable only if the select board developed a policy and voted to do it, so you were in control of that. But with COVID, that kind of temporarily anyway, that ability to control, do we remote or not remote, has kind of been watered down. So it's really a change in the open meeting law that you can do this, so long as, again, you're providing that alternative means. It doesn't mean, if the planning board, for example, decides we're gonna have an in-person meeting and we're not gonna broadcast it, we're not gonna have it on Zoom or anything like that, well, then this still matters. But a lot of cities and towns are, just as a matter of, I guess, making themselves more accessible to the public, are continuing to have similar to what you did here tonight, a Zoom link, and people can follow along online.
So I guess my,
Yeah, go ahead.
my question is, so we would, at this point in time, until 25, we could vote that the select board has to be in person. But if we have remote capability, then that really isn't the case. Like, if my, essentially what I think should happen is, I mean, this is my opinion, that all boards should be in person. I mean, that's my opinion. So if we voted that, say tonight we voted the select board meeting should all be in person, would we still be able to provide the Zoom link for town members to view the meeting, just not participate?
Yeah, so ultimately, I think, if I follow what you're saying, the board could sort of, as a board, decide, this is how we would like our meetings to be conducted. We would like people to be here as much as humanly possible. And so that's your express preference for how you want your board to run. If one way to do that, obviously, would be you don't provide a Zoom link, and then if somebody wants to be here, they have to be here. And you don't have, you don't allow remote participation, and that's the way you can control it for your own board. You won't be able to affect the other boards. Once you provide that link and make it available, though, I'm not sure that you can say to a select board member that says, well, I can't be there and I'm just gonna, be there online. Well, no, you can't. Like, you've already allowed that access there, it's open, we can't selectively apply it.
That makes sense.
And I think the school committee right now
They're in person.
is all in person, and they're not doing any
Right.
remote. You have to be there in person, so, but that school committee can make that decision like we could make that decision
Right.
ourselves. Yeah.
So I'm not gonna push it tonight, but I think that's something we should consider.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Renee, did you want to
Yeah, can I just
say
ask a
something?
question?
Sure.
And only because you mentioned the May 2021 date. So I don't know, Mike, if we approve this, but I have a revised remote participation policy dated May 27th, 2021. I think that the board did some changes to the initial one. And I just wanted to mention two things on that. First, when the remote participation policy was put in place, it was only for members of the public body. It wasn't for the public or anyone else. So it just might be something that you guys would want to consider to change. But Mr. Chair, through you to Joe, I also had a note that there was some updated legislation in Q3 of 2021 that would extend it to the public, members of the public, for permanent change rather than through limited circumstances. I don't know if that happened, but I just want to mention it for your consideration if you're making modifications to the policy, that there may be an updated policy that's already there, and there may be some additional changes that need to happen just from legislation. I don't know if you remember that.
Well, I think that if, in and around 2021, the legislative changes that were happening were those COVID-related changes.
It was all COVID?
And it was that what was happening is they were doing it, initially for like 3 months, and then it got extended, and then it got pushed a little bit further, so they kept adding on to the time frame, but only in, like 6-month blocks or somewhere around that. That's likely what that is. That I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't note that it was COVID, but maybe it could have been at that time because it was so new.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is any of the remote participation legislation that's been going through since COVID has all been related to these hybrid meetings that we've all been doing. There's really been no need for them to mess around with the former remote participation rules because we weren't operating under them at the time. And now the COVID-related rules have been extended out to 2025. I suspect that's what that was in reference to. I mean, it wasn't called COVID rules, it was remote participation or hybrid meetings. Yeah. But that's what that was. There weren't really any other changes that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
But this one here, I made changes, I think initially it said teleconference, so it was, and that was 2019. You'd think that Zoom's been around forever.
Well, yeah, but we didn't have Zoom until 3 months into COVID.
I know.
Yeah.
So I made those changes, and again, another reason for putting this off a little too is, I'm open to any more changes.
And I think it's a good idea, because to have something, as you know, as we get, you know, if they were to say in 2025, you know, we're not extending this anymore, like you were saying, this allows people to participate more, whereas right now we're sort of giving them, they have as much participation as they want right now through the you know what I mean? So I think this is intended to be like, oh, you know, the board is, you know, meeting on Thursday night and you can't make it and we need you there, you can participate remotely and
It's
we have a
easier
policy
to
for that.
engage.
Well, yeah, to that point, for the
Like
school
the
committee,
plan, yeah.
for the school committee right now, if they're all in person, this policy would help if one of them or two of them, you know, God forbid, got COVID and couldn't come in, but they could still remotely.
Yeah, like I said, let's say they only had, like, 2 people were on vacation and they needed a third to participate remotely to have a quorum, they could allow it using this policy. But they don't need that right
They
now
would-
because they have.
Well, they could put a link.
They would have to have.
Right.
And then there's some-
Then it's all done, right,
Yeah.
right.
The other thing, they would have to actually implement the policy, because we found out during this that the board doesn't have the purview over the school committee.
The school, yeah, it'd be the school,
committee's
yeah.
elected, right?
I was using that as an example, yeah.
Steve, can I just ask, the policy that you updated, does it say select board or board of selectmen?
It said Board of Selectmen, and I put Select Board in there.
Okay.
Unless I missed one or two of them, but I'm pretty sure.
It just, I think that just goes to the thing. If you don't mind, I'll just send this revision I have for May to you and Steve, so you can look at it, and then, because there were a couple other changes in here that were talked about that you guys might want to consider.
Be great.
And then that way you just have it in your mailboxes.
Awesome.
Mike, I'll copy you as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Denise.
Through you, do you think that the state will eventually want to adopt that long-term because it helps the more engagement?
I know that there's been a lot of push to do that, and that's how you wound up with the 2 years. I know the Mass Municipal Association, I think, has been very supportive of that. A lot of cities and towns are just finding that it's just increasing public participation and, you know, local government. You know, so it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You want to encourage that as much as you can. So they didn't seem to be ready to put it in permanently.
Right.
It's sort of like, okay, well, let's try this. We're past COVID, so in terms of, you know, the state of emergency and whatnot, so let's try this for 2 years in a sort of a non-COVID environment and see how this is working. I mean, this is just me, you know, speculating as to why they might just do a 2-year grant, and let's see how that plays out and see in a longer-term observation period, how's it working? And if it looks like it's working and everybody's happy with it, I suspect they'll just make it permanent.
Makes sense.
Okay. Yes, on the Norton Media website, I'm viewing a planning board meeting from March 2020, in which you, Stephen, Paul Giuseppe were in the media center using the Polycom that Jason set up. And I like hybrid meetings, and I can attend the meetings, whether in person or when I'm on go, or when I'm at a sporting event, I can view them online. So anyway, I can get what's going on in town.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
And look at the hair, Steve.
That's right.
That's always great. Mr. Chair, that meeting was, I believe, the last in-person one we did for quite a while, and Paul DiGiuseppe and I were about 6 feet apart, and we both had hand sanitizer. We're doing this literally every 2 seconds.
It is amazing to think that when we first put the policy in place, it was for the phone.
Yeah. Like I said, it was 2 months before COVID. I think it was Julie Oakley had to call in because we needed her for a specific vote, and we had to, you know, vote for her to participate remotely. So.
And Mike, I was in this same building on March 11th, 2020, and Will Watani of FinCom said, "What is the contingency plans? Is stuff like this is told not to happen anymore before the town meeting?"
Yep. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you,
Peter.
All right. I'm going to take a quick step back. Did we have any topics not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours? I don't think we had any. Did anybody have anything? Nothing? Okay. All right. I'll cross that off. And then town manager's report. We have the DPW passed at the election. So yeah, we got some stuff to do there, I think.
Yep, so the DPW passed, and as you know, there's 3 members of the Water and Sewer Commission right now. And say, so Mr. Bernstein was just reelected, so he's there for 3 years. Next year, whoever only has 1 year left will have to be appointed by the select board because it's now an appointed position. The Water and Sewer Commission still does exist, it's just an appointed position. They still have all the powers that they have currently. So I've started looking for job descriptions for DPW directors from various towns, and we'll also be looking at salary surveys of DPW commissioners. And then we'll have to look at when we think we can start transitioning to it. I'm thinking of 2020, FY25, so next July. We gotta look at where we're gonna put this person, what all the costs are gonna be, gonna need a vehicle. I'll talk to other various DPW directors and see what they had for staff. Are you gonna need another clerical person now?
I love that budget item, huh?
So it just, I'll get back to you as I get more and more of this information, let you know where we're at with this.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just quick question on the job description. What are the things that you're looking for? Like, did you include stuff like project planning and engineering experience? 'Cause I think some of the hope was that we would eliminate some of the engineering costs, right, by having.
An engineer is,
Right.
Yeah, if you have an engineer, you'll have someone that has oversight and is able to review and make sure the engineers aren't pulling his leg, but they're not gonna have equipment, they're not gonna be able to do engineering. It just can't happen. With one person, you're not gonna have survey crews, you're not gonna have all the programs that civil engineers and land surveyors have. So you wouldn't have that, it would just be someone that has engineering background that would have some oversight over engineers and the design.
So aren't some of them though just engineering, like reviewing the plans to analyze whether or
Right.
not,
Things like that.
those kinds of things, they
Yep.
could at least eliminate the cost of outsourcing that.
Yep.
That all you got?
That's all I got for now on that.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. The Norton Land Preservation Society is having their 50th anniversary celebration this Saturday between 11 and 2. Encourage anybody if they can make it. Is anybody planning on going? I'm going to try to go.
I might try to go.
It's, yeah, so 11 to 2.
Mayor will be there.
I
Mayor-
cannot.
Mayor Wiggins will be there.
All right. It's the anniversary party is providing them with an occasion to recognize or acknowledge the work the LPS has done since 1970 to preserve Norton's unique natural beauty and spaces for quiet reflection. The LPS is awesome, so if anybody can attend, that would be great. And that is in the community room of the Norton Public Library, like I said, Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
That is open to the public, they love to have.
Yep, so, all right. Did you already approve these warrants?
I did, so
Okay.
should I approve them?
Yep.
Okay. I approve the invoice and payroll warrants as printed in today's agenda.
All right. Okay, next meeting,
Yay!
May 25th, 2023.
See, it wasn't so hard.
And then we need to go into executive session. Thank you. I declare under general laws, chapter 30A, section 21, paragraph A3, that the purposes of the executive session will be to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining concerning Steelworkers Union Local 9517, Unit 15, Cena A, and Norton Firefighters Local 2678, IAFF, because a discussion of the strategies in open session could compromise the purposes of the executive session, and with the board to not return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
All right, so I move that the board go into executive session under General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, for the purposes and reasons declared by the chair and with the board to not return to open session thereafter.
Do we ever have a second?
Second.
All right. Meg seconds. A roll call vote to go into executive session. Meg? Steve?
Yes.
Alec?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
And I am a yes. And we are in executive session.